Greetings. I am Nicole Everett, the host of Conversations with Nicole, a talk show based here in Tallahassee, Florida, connecting the community through conversations. And today, I am having a virtual meet and greet with Commissioner Curtis Richardson, seat 2 of City of Tallahassee. So I invite you all to come on in this room and let's have a conversation with Curtis. Bring your questions, bring your comments, and let's just have a good time. We've been in this pandemic, so in lieu of being together in a room at a meeting hall or someone's home, we're doing a virtual meet and greet. So join me in welcoming Commissioner Curtis Richardson.
Hello, Nicole.
Hey, what's going on, Commissioner Richardson?
Well, it's good to be with you. I've looked forward to coming on your show for a long time now, and here we are, virtually, but here we are. And
Here
so
we
I'm
are.
excited to be here and looking forward to spending these next few minutes with you, talking about what's happening in Tallahassee and what's going on with my campaign. As you can tell from behind me, I'm running for reelection to the city commission
Mhm.
and look forward to continuing to serve this great community of ours.
Okay, well, very good. Well, so glad to have you, and you have been
Hmm.
a long-time community servant. So
Right.
I'm going to let you tell the viewers where you're from, what you do, like what your background is, and why you
Yeah.
seek to be reelected.
Well, Nicole, I was very glad to hear you say community servant because that's what I consider myself. Of course, those who don't support me or might be campaigning against me want to call me a career politician, but I retired from a career in largely in public education, and I'll talk about that. But I consider myself a public servant. I enjoy serving this community, and I have for a number of years now, both inside and outside of
Mhm.
elective office. But I came to Tallahassee as a student at Florida State University. That's been quite some time ago now.
Go
Uh,
Noles.
and I, yeah, and I graduated with degrees in psychology. I'm actually a school psychologist by training. A lot of people don't know that because
Yeah.
I left the profession a long time ago. Um, and I started my professional career in a neighboring school district in Gaston County and served as a school psychologist there for about 10 years.
Okay.
And then had an opportunity to move on from there to state government. I worked for the former education commissioner, Betty Castor, had the great fortune of being an aide to the late Governor Lawton Childs. And
Mhm.
that was one of the best experiences professionally and politically I could have ever had.
Okay.
And I have tried to model my public service after the late Governor Lawton Childs because he was indeed a public servant.
Indeed.
And so, and then I went on and did a couple of other things, some consulting, and ended up my professional career came full circle when I went back to the Gadsden School District, first as the school improvement coordinator, and then as the STEM coordinator, science,
Mhm.
technology, engineering, and math.
Okay.
And so I left Gadsden after about 20 years altogether and spent about a year and a half at Lively Technical College
Mhm.
as their community relations coordinator. And that's where I retired from back in November. Uh, and so eventually, of course, I would meet my wife here.
Mhm.
She was a student at Florida State University.
And your
And we,
who?
what's that again?
And your wife is who?
Well, my wife is Judge Nina Ashinafi Richardson.
Yes, we need to
The,
mention that.
oh, absolutely. The love of my life.
Okay.
I wouldn't be where I am today without her love and support, Nicole. And so we were married almost 30 years ago now.
Wow.
We chose to build our home on the south side of Tallahassee
Mhm.
because we wanted to be an example for other professionals like us that we could have a good living in neighborhoods on the south side of Tallahassee. And so
Right.
we've been here now for about 30 years. We
Hmm.
raised both of our daughters
Right.
on this side of town. My oldest is now a midshipman at the United States Naval Academy, and my youngest is a 10th grader
Hmm.
at Leon High School.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. And so I then started getting interested in local politics uh, prior to my getting married. And just seeing at that time, Nicole, the inequities that existed in the school district between schools on the south side of town and schools on the north side. The
Mm-hmm.
district was growing at the time, technology was becoming prevalent, but the resources that were being allocated to schools on the south side of town were not equitable at all. And so the quality of education that a child received in our school district was dependent on where they were zoned for school. At the time, we didn't have school choice and the opportunity for parents to move their kids around. And
Mm-hmm.
so seeing that, I decided that as a single Black male, that I needed to be where the decisions were being made, and that was
Hmm.
on the school board. How
Gotcha.
resources were allocated, the quality, improving the quality of schools, recruiting minority teachers for the school district. And so I ran initially against a 16-year incumbent
Mm-hmm.
and lost that election. That was an at-large election. And then we went to single member districts, and I was elected to the school board in 1990.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would serve 6 years on the school board. I was chairman for 2 years. Later, would be elected to the Florida House of Representatives,
Mm-hmm.
representing parts of Leon and Gadsden counties.
Mm-hmm.
Served 8 years there
Right.
until I was term limited out, um, and then thought I was done with politics. And, but then I saw another need, and that was the fact that there was no one advocating on our city commission for neighborhoods on the south side of town. And so
Okay.
again, I got that political bug and decided that I would run for the city commission. And I've been on the commission now for 6 years. And so
Okay.
yeah, so that's my political history, and I've also
Mhm.
been very involved outside of politics. I've
Mhm.
been a member of a number of boards and organizations.
Mhm.
Served on the original Blueprint 2000 committee
Mhm.
uh, that developed the list of infrastructure projects that the community needed and helped pass the 1 cent sales tax, and then eventually would serve as vice chairman of the sales tax committee,
Mhm.
which continued that 1 cent sales tax and also identified other infrastructure projects that the community needed. But in addition to that, this time around, we set aside a portion of the proceeds over the next 20 years for economic development
Okay.
here in the city of Tallahassee. So that's been, my history in Tallahassee. I love this community. I can't think of any place else I would want to live and raise a family and be involved. And of course, as I mentioned, my wife worked for 18 years with the state teachers union prior to her running and being elected as a county judge. And
Okay.
so we both have been very active and involved in giving back to a community that has given so much to us.
All right. Very good. Well, let me just pause and let the folks know who may be just joining us. This is a
Okay.
virtual meet and greet with Commissioner Curtis Richardson, City of Tallahassee, seat two.
Mm-hmm.
He is seeking re-election in this upcoming general election. So, Curtis, tell the folks why you are seeking re-election.
Well, Nicole, as I mentioned, because my wife and I live on the south side of town, we see on a daily basis how this area, the South City area, Jake Gaither, Bond neighborhood, especially Providence, going north to Frenchtown and Griffin Heights, how those areas have been neglected over the years. Uh, Resources have not been invested in these areas. There's lots of decay. The housing stock certainly is lacking improvement or needs to be improved. We don't have much economic development on this side of town.
Mhm.
All of the jobs are, in other parts of the city. And so I looked at that, and like I said, I had come out of the legislature just a few years prior, and the opportunity came for me to run when then Commissioner Andrew Gillum resigned from his seat
Mhm.
and decided to run for mayor. And so I ran to replace him on the commission because I wanted to be a voice for the South Side of Tallahassee.
Okay.
Um,
So
and we
redevelopment, revitalization of neighborhoods, that's one of the reasons you're seeking reelection.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And we've made tremendous strides in
Okay.
that area.
All right. What are some of the initiatives that maybe you have either spearheaded or been a part of in terms of revitalization and
Oh,
redevelopment?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as a member of the Community Redevelopment Agency,
Mm-hmm.
the city commissioners at the time also served with the county commissioners as the board of directors of the CRA. I knew that there were areas on the south side of town that were not at the time included within the CRA district,
Okay.
like South City,
Mm-hmm.
that were in desperate need of revitalization and redevelopment as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one of my first goals, was to get that area included in the CRA.
Okay. So
Interestingly enough,
expand the CRA
the
area.
boundary, yes.
Yes. Okay.
And interestingly enough, Nicole, it took me 4 years to accomplish that, but I was intent on making that happen. And I tell you, one of the immediate benefits of it was the Tallahassee Housing Authority is now in the process of revitalizing and redeveloping,
Mhm.
actually, the Orange Avenue apartments. It's
Right.
a 250 unit apartment complex that's
Mhm.
50 years old, it's antiquated, outdated. Um, and so we were able to leverage money because it was now in the CRA. We were able to leverage money from the CRA so that the housing authority could get a $23 million grant to
Mhm.
start the first phase of the redevelopment of that housing complex. I think it's going to be a 4 or 5 phase redevelopment, but we're off to a great start. That may not have happened had not the South City area been included within the CRA and got that funding.
Okay.
As a member of the sales tax committee,
Mhm.
I lobbied for a $5 million appropriation for a new Star Metro transfer facility at the corner of Orange Avenue and South Meridian.
Mhm.
I have fought for infrastructure improvements on the south side of town. If you go into South City now, you'll see sidewalks on
Mhm.
Putnam and Polk Drive. They're just
Mhm.
now starting the
Yeah.
sidewalk on Texas Street.
Mhm.
Those weren't there, Nicole, when I came to the commission. And
You're right. They
we,
weren't.
yeah, and we had young ladies pushing baby carriages in the middle of the street because
Mm.
there were no sidewalks.
Mhm.
And so I also fought to get $12 million for improvements to the fairgrounds. We're hoping that one day we're able to work out an agreement with the North Florida Fair Authority that has a 99-year lease on that property, so that the city and county can purchase it and be able to redevelop that property. That's the largest single area of undeveloped property on the south side of town, and
Gotcha.
that would be transformational. I've been fighting to get Orange Avenue widened. Traffic on Orange Avenue is horrendous between South Adams and Capitol Circle Southwest. And
Mm.
so we're in the process now of the design for four-laning that strip of Orange Avenue.
Okay.
Uh, and what I'm most happy about and excited about, Nicole, is
Mhm.
is what we've done, especially through the CRA, with investing in our neighborhoods.
Okay.
Uh, if you look at the Bond neighborhood under the leadership of Talithia Edwards
Mhm.
and their community action team, with people like Jackie Perkins and Rhett Turnquist and others,
Mhm.
they came up with a plan for redeveloping the Bond community that they presented to the CRA.
Right.
It wasn't what we told them they should have or needed to have. It was a plan that they came up with. And now we're providing the funding for that plan. Uh, they're scheduled to get over the next 3 years, $6 million
Mm-hmm.
for the redevelopment of the Bond community for infrastructure, housing, lighting, streetscaping, landscaping, many improvements to that neighborhood that are long overdue. And the same is the case with Providence, with Frenchtown, like I said, South City. We are investing now in those neighborhoods to bring them back to life. These were traditionally African American neighborhoods that thrived during the period of segregation, but fell onto hard times after integration.
Okay. So what are some of your other what are some other parts of your platform as it relates to reelection?
Okay. Well, as we know, Nicole, we've got an issue with crime in our community.
Mm-hmm.
It's personal for me as well as political, because I have had now, within the last 6 months, three killings within a mile of my house.
Mm,
A little 16-year-old was killed on the grounds of my church, which
mm,
is in walking distance from
mm-hmm.
my house. A service station on West Tennessee, West Orange Avenue. A
Mm,
young man was killed at one of these pop-up parties where there was 100, 200 people and nobody saw what happened. But
mm,
there was a young man killed in the parking lot just a week ago at the Circle K, again on South Monroe and Orange.
mm-hmm.
Same thing. And this is recurring in our community. And unfortunately, Nicole, it's African American young men that
Mm-hmm.
it's happening to for the most part. And so that's one of the issues that we have as a community, not just the south side of town, just not Frenchtown, but our entire community is going to have to grapple with this issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's a law enforcement issue to some degree, and we've given our police department some of the resources that they need in terms of additional staffing and technology and equipment. But we've got to work with our neighborhoods. We've got to work with the businesses in the community to provide opportunities for young people so that they don't turn to a life of crime. We can't police our way out of it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we could have 100 police officers just on this side of town, and we're still going to have crime if we don't start to address the root causes of it, starting early in life,
Mm-hmm.
and then giving these young people when they are high school, middle and high school age, and when they graduate, giving them the education and training that they need in order to be gainfully employed. It's going to have to be a holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but if we don't do it as a community, Tallahassee is going to Tallahassee, not the South Side, not Frenchtown, but our city is still going to be seen as one that is unsafe, and people may not want to move here or move their businesses here. And so
Now,
that's
let me
certainly one of our top
let
priorities.
me just interrupt you. So, who do you think that onus falls on? Because as I listen, I recognize that it is important to ask the question about
Mhm.
what is the need? Like, why is this happening? Why are there these shootings? Why are
Right.
there these large gatherings, especially since we are still in the middle of a pandemic?
Yes.
And
Yes.
while I understand that the governor of this state has opened things up, we are
Hmm.
supposedly in phase three. You know, it's still not necessarily a time for us
No.
to be gathering in large settings like that.
Right.
So, who does this fall on, Curtis? Who, in your opinion?
Well, Nicole, like I said, a lot of it falls on our community. Because we should know better.
Hmm.
We as a community, we've got to work together to make sure that these things don't happen. We can't just rely on the police department or the sheriff's department or other law enforcement agencies. This is going to have to be a collective approach,
Okay.
and so I think it's all of our responsibility as a community to address these issues. Our business community, because that's where it's happening, on business property. These pop-up parties, 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 of them on a weekend night.
Mm.
They had one where there was upwards of 1,000 people gathered at an apartment complex.
I heard.
And as you mentioned, we know that this virus has not gone anywhere, and
Mm.
it's impacting African Americans more than anybody because we have those underlying conditions:
Mm.
obesity, hypertension, diabetes, uh, cancer in a lot of instances,
Mm.
and we are being impacted most. And so it certainly does not behoove us to be congregated in these large groups, and then if and then taking something home to grandma or granddaddy or
Mm.
mama and daddy.
Right. Right. Right.
And so it really is going to be, and then of course, like I said, we have instances where it ends up in violence occurring and somebody being killed. So
Mhm.
we're trying to deal with those as well, but this is throughout the community. I was over in Springfield not long ago, where within 1 week's time, 6 people were shot, young people, one man, an innocent bystander, killed in the parking lot of a convenience store.
Yes.
So that's our challenge.
So I want to just pause and invite those who are joining us. This is a virtual meet and greet. So please put your comments, put your questions in the comments because we want to definitely address them. This is an
Mhm.
opportunity for you to get to know Commissioner Richardson better and, ask him the questions that you have about the city of Tallahassee, and, what his goals and platform is. He's talked about redevelopment and revitalization of neighborhoods. He's talked about public
Mhm.
safety. And I believe the economy is one that
Oh,
we need to
absolutely.
be focusing on as well. So,
Sure.
what's your thought about the Tallahassee economy and how we can improve upon that?
Well, it was roaring before this pandemic, Nicole. But as we know, when COVID arrived, that put a halt on everything. We have been blessed here in Tallahassee, though, especially the city of Tallahassee. We were able to balance our budget, this fiscal year's budget, without having to make drastic cuts or layoffs of personnel, and we have been able to balance our next fiscal year, the 21 fiscal year budget, uh, without, again, drastic cuts or laying off not one employee. We were
Mm.
so proud of that. And so, what that means is those individuals will still have money to take care of themselves and their family and to reinvest in the economy. But Tallahassee residents have lost hundreds of jobs. We did have some programs in place to kind of buttress those businesses. We gave out grants,
Mm-hmm.
$1 million in grants, 250,000 in grants to businesses within the Frenchtown Southside CRA,
Mm-hmm.
to help them stay afloat, through this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But the long-term effects are going to be drastic. I'm hoping that we get through this within the next year or so. Uh, right now, our biggest issue is creating jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and putting people back to work and getting people trained to assume the new jobs that will be created
Mm-hmm.
in the STEM areas, as I mentioned, in
Right.
career and technical education. And
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, I can't emphasize that enough. After having spent a year or so at Lively,
Mm-hmm.
I am convinced that is the way for so many of our young people to go. We have a welding program at Lively. A
Mm-hmm.
student can go through that welding program in 1 year, Nicole, and come out and get a job making better than $100,000 a year.
I've heard
One
that.
year of training.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true of the nursing program, anything in the construction trades. The jobs are plentiful,
Okay.
and yet the school is under enrolled, and so we've got to encourage our young people to seek that kind of training.
Well, we need to get the word out about Lively and what they have to offer. So, perhaps part of that fix will be, some marketing or some PR,
Yes.
some
Yeah.
promotions as it
Yeah.
relates to that, because
Hmm. Yeah.
it that time frame is so much shorter than your traditional, college and university.
Sure.
And
And the same, the TCC has very similar programs.
mhm,
And Nicole, the good thing about the programs at Lively, I'm more familiar with Lively, of course, than TCC. With the financial aid that most of the students receive,
mhm.
all of their fees are paid for.
Oh
They
wow,
leave Lively debt free
yeah,
and can go out and make that kind of money immediately.
you can't beat that, because boy, I
No,
tell you,
no.
look, student
Yeah,
loans are eating folks up after they get their, degree and are working. They are, whew, a slave to those student loans. So
right.
that's awesome that they're able to um, you know, be debt free as a result of getting that training.
Yeah, yeah. And so in addition to that, we are also trying to bring business
Okay.
and industry to Tallahassee and to the south side of town in particular to create those jobs. Not only the high wage, high skilled jobs for the college graduates, because we train thousands of students here in Tallahassee and they have to leave to find jobs that
Hmm.
will pay them, the kind of money that they need to make in order to take care of themselves and a family.
Okay.
And so we're trying to grow our local businesses, and in addition, recruit new business to Tallahassee. And so that's part of our economic development strategy for the city.
Gotcha. So we got a question on the front floor from Janae. She
Okay.
wants to know, is there a relationship between Tempo and Lively?
Yes, absolutely. I had the great fortune of working with many of the students from the Tempo program. The Tempo is a program that is run through the city. It was essentially founded by Dr. Kimball Thomas,
Hmm.
who's a very good friend of mine. He started out with one or two students, and I think now he has about 1,000 students enrolled in that program.
Hmm.
These are students who largely are high school dropouts, may have had a brush with the law, may need to get a GED diploma or degree. And then many of them have now gone on to Lively and to TCC.
Okay.
But many of those students, the ones that don't have their GED, they go to adult and community education, which is a part of the Lively campus.
Gotcha.
And so and then once they get that GED, then they're eligible for the programs at Lively. So there's a very strong working relationship and partnership between the two.
Okay. Very good. Thanks for answering that. Good question, Janae.
Yes, very good.
So, we've covered quite a bit, which is great. Hopefully,
Yeah,
folks have gotten to know a little bit more about who you are and why you're seeking
right,
reelection and what your platform is: the economy, public safety, redevelopment, and the revitalization of
right.
neighborhoods. But how can folks connect with you during the campaign or assist with the
Mhm.
campaign? If you have any campaign needs, how can they connect with you?
Well, any campaign can always use contributions.
Okay.
Nicole, we've got another month, and I know we're going to talk about some of those dates
Mhm.
that are coming up. Uh, but they can go to my website and learn more about me and how to get involved with the campaign at Curtis for City Commission.com. That's Curtis for City Commission.com.
All right.
And we would be more than happy to get you involved as a volunteer during when early voting is in a couple of weeks, and we'll have volunteers doing sign waving. Unfortunately, with the uh, coronavirus as it is, we can't do a whole lot of individual and group contact. So
Mm.
that limits what we can do in terms of personal contact. But we can certainly, like I said, do the sign waving and encourage people to attend. I think Congressman Lawson is working on a Souls to the Polls event at the Civic Center
Okay.
in just a few weeks. And we'll be hearing more about that soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
But what I would want to say, in addition to that, Nicole, is our people especially, must vote. it's not an option for us
Yes,
at this point. You
very.
know, we've had our ancestors that have literally given their lives so that we could have the right to vote. That's guaranteed in our Constitution, but has been denied to us. And now that we have that right, so many of us don't exercise it. And every aspect of our everyday work, walking life or waking life is somehow impacted by an individual elected to office at every level, from President of the United States of America down to local city and county commissions and school boards. And we just cannot afford to take that for granted and neglect that responsibility.
Absolutely. And I would say especially the local elections because
Yes,
that impact is pretty immediate. So let's look at these dates. So we got the mail-in ballots which have already hit the streets, right?
right. Hmm.
And those can be turned in either by mail or dropped off at the early voting site
Well, right now at the Supervisor of Elections
at the
office.
supervisor of elections office. Okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
So early voting will begin on what day?
October 19th,
Okay.
and will continue for the 2 weeks until November 1st.
Okay.
And those polling locations will be identified. I don't know exactly where all of them are at this point, but they will be identified. You'll get correspondence from the supervisor of elections office.
Right.
Uh, and then at that time, also, Nicole, people can drop off their mail ballot
Okay.
uh, at the polling place. They will have individuals there manning a drop box, and they can put their ballot in a uh, secured drop box.
Right. So they can drop their ballots off there, and then we have registering to vote until when?
October 5th is the
Okay.
deadline to register in order to be able to vote in this November 3rd election.
All right.
And that you can go to the supervisor of elections website, leonvotes.com, and
Mhm.
all of the information will be there as to what you need to do in order to register to vote.
All right. So one more again, we got register to vote by October 5th, early
Mhm.
voting October 19th through November 1st.
Right.
Mail-in
E-
ballots from now until election day,
e-
but you want to try to
Exactly.
get it in early.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the supervisor is certainly encouraging people to get those in as early as possible,
right.
but they have to be postmarked by November 3rd. So
Okay.
they have to get to the post office by November 3rd so that they can be postmarked and counted on election day,
Okay. Very good. And then election day, of course, is November 3rd. So
November 3rd,
vote, vote,
November
vote, vote,
3rd.
vote.
Yes,
Yes.
we can't emphasize it enough, Nicole. And then I would add too, if you haven't completed your census form,
Mm,
please do that as well, because that helps determine the kinds of resources that come back to our community
mm.
from the federal government for things like parks and school lunch programs and federal aid programs. All of that is determined by that census count. So
Yeah.
please complete that as well and return it.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah,
to the viewers for your
yes.
listening and commenting, although we didn't have as many questions as I would have liked, but that's all right. I'm glad you were here to
I
talk.
guess I did a good job of answering them during my presentation,
I guess
Nicole.
you did. I guess you did. All right. Well, all the best to you, and we'll
Thank you,
see you
Nicole.
election night.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this. I look forward to it, and it was as enjoyable as I thought it would be.
Well, good. Thank you so much.
So thank you for all that you do.
All right. Take
All
care.
right. Okay. Bye, everybody.